There's nothing Paul likes as much as receiving feedback about the Joy of Cruising podcast. You can now send him feedback via the message link on each episode. He can't respond, but he may read your text on air. Welcome to the Joy of Cruising podcast with your host, award-winning author Paul C. Thornton, a weekly conversation with the amazing cruisers featured in the Joy of Cruising trilogy, comprised of The Joy of Cruising, Cruising Interrupted, and new release, The Joy of Cruising Again. Each book is a compilation of features about cruisers and cruise and travel personalities from around the world. It's the next best thing to cruising, hearing about cruising from the unique and diverse perspectives of Paul's amazing guests.
Hello, passionate cruisers. This is Paul, and I am delighted to welcome this week on the Joy of Cruising podcast a special guest, Damon Williams, a legendary comedian, actor, host, writer, and producer, and also a future cruise mate. He is a native of Chicago who has become a household name in the entertainment industry for over 30 years. Williams' journey to stardom began as a young entrepreneur owning a Subway sandwich shop in the early 90s. However, he caught the comedy bug, and since then, he hasn't looked back. Over the years, Williams has worked with some of the most iconic stars in show business, too many to mention. He has performed stand-up comedy on several networks, including numerous television appearances. Williams' reputation as a highly sought-after comedian led him to earning the opening night on the legendary Kings of Comedy tour. I first got to see Damon live in 2018 when he sailed on Celebrity Equinox for Festival at Sea, the 35-year-old perennially sold-out African-American cultural cruise. I wrote about Festival at Sea in my first cruising book, The Joy of Cruising. This is what I wrote about Damon. The nationally known comedians on the cruise included Damon Williams, featured performer and cruise host from the nationally syndicated Tom Joyner Morning Show. Damon has been a featured performer and host on Festival at Sea since 2006. I recently learned that we will experience Damon live again in a few months. We are booked on the Soulful Epicurean French River Cruise on Ama Christina with Friends of Festival at Sea, a luxury cruise affiliate of Festival at Sea. For the full ship charter, Friends of Festival at Sea will bring its own comedian host, Damon, as well as a featured Friends of Festival at Sea jazz instrumentalist, a dance instructor, and a resident DJ. By the way, the Joy of Cruising podcast did host Patricia Yarbrough, founder of Festival at Sea, back in August. Welcome, Damon, to the Joy of Cruising podcast.
Thanks for having me, man.
How you doing?
Fantastic, to be honest. And actually, I'm sitting in a room of chaos because I've yet to unpack from the last cruise I was on, was just like almost less than 2 weeks ago.
Let me be nosy. What was that?
The Capital Jazz Super Cruise.
Oh, I know that was nice. I was on one pretty much at the same time. I was on the Maxwell cruise.
Nice.
Now, were you the host or just a performing comedian on the Capital Jazz?
I'm one of the hosts now, myself with Mike Phillips and Eric Robeson, the two musicians who spearhead the cruise. And so, so I hosted a couple of events and performed on the comedy show. So it was a great time.
It's good seeing you again. It's been several years when I saw you on Festival at Sea. But before we discuss Festival at Sea and our upcoming Dream River Cruise, first tell our listeners about yourself in general. Where you're from, where you live, anything you would like to share.
Well, I'm Damon Williams, 31 years in stand-up, Chicago, born and raised. Been around the world traveling, for stand-up, and also cruising has opened up a whole new horizon of places that I'd never been. I went on one of the gigs I took was the Mediterranean cruise, and it started off in Barcelona and, went through Italy and France, and that was amazing. But my stand-up career started here in Chicago after not failing, but defaulting my Subway sandwich shop franchise. I thought I was going to be a sandwich mogul here in Chicago, but I got into Subway early before the brand took off. Actually, I like to say it was before Jared lost all that weight. Jared turned the franchise around because it became a healthy, weight loss type fast food. And that's before we knew he was a freaky dude. Anyway, fortunately, I got out of Subway and found out about stand up. And I went to open mic, and Adele Givens was the host, and I did the open mic, and I stayed at it ever since, man. I found my passion, and it's taken me a lot of places and gave me the opportunity to meet a lot of people and see a lot of the world, especially with Festival at Sea. They've had me a recurring host for many years now, and it's just a blessing to go and hang out with those people, to cruise in that fashion, because general cruises are great, but chartered cruises are much better.
Oh yeah. I've written several cruise related books, and in all three, I talk a lot about what I call theme cruising. There's just nothing like it. Two passions in one: cruising and whatever the theme is. So I have had several stand-up comedians on my show, my podcast, and I have a couple scheduled in the future. So I have kind of learned with stand-up comedians, start by asking what's on your mind, rather than me just asking you some scripted questions. What do you want to talk about?
I'd like to talk about the fact that stand-up is alive and well, and it's been some controversy with the comedians bickering on podcasts with Cat Williams and the Shannon Sharp thing, Monique and some of her I want to say gripes, but some of the issues that she's faced in entertainment. So it's a good thing for it to be a topic of discussion, but it's not great to see the people going at each other. But I do say that it's brought more eyes to comedians. We've been invited to more radio shows and podcasts just to talk about it. But I love the art form. I love what it does for the people in the room, from a comedy club on to a stadium, to get a bunch of people like-minded, laughing, enjoying themselves, not worried about their issues, relieving stress. It's a gift that I've been given, and I love to share and love to use it in a positive manner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I am passionate about stand-up comedy, almost as passionate about stand-up as I am about cruising. And it's kind of sad to see some of the sniping back and forth, because I like them all.
Exactly.
Regardless of what side they're on.
Yeah, and I was glad to be on either side, because my name didn't come up once, and I know all of those guys. So thank God for that. Or possibly maybe my name should have come up, and more people will be trying to look and see who I am, because all publicity is good, they say. So you get light shined upon yourself. But it is much of a disappointment to see them sniping, as you put it. But you got to laugh, and as you're a comedian, you got to be able to take some lumps. I was just on tour with most of the people that Kat mentioned. I was on the Straight Jokes No Chaser tour, which included Mike Epps, Cedric Entertainer, Earthquake, Bruce, Lunel, Don DC Curry, on different variations of that. And the tour ended right like 3 days or 2 days before Kat's interview, which I felt was fortuitous for me, because I would have hated to have to see those guys, after Kat did what he did, have to walk into the stadium and just the elephant in the room would have been crazy.
Mm-hmm. For the listeners who are not up on what we're referring to, just Google Club Shay Shay. That's Shannon Sharp's podcast, and it's a video podcast. And he had Cat Williams, a top comedian on, and that started it all. But I don't want to digress. I want to talk about Damon Williams. So besides, let's talk about cruising. Besides Festival at Sea, which I know you've done a long time, are you a cruiser in general? You just said you just got off one.
I only do them now when it's work related, because it doesn't make sense for me to pay when I'm being paid to do them. But I would enjoy a cruise vacation. Like if I was to get my family together and say what should we do as a unit, a group, my extended family, then a cruise would be a great idea. Just the fact that it's like a floating all inclusive resort, and the The boat is basically your Uber to check out the islands. That's the way I look at it. Yeah, so it's a great vacation if you plan it right. You plan ahead. Then once you get there, if you know the tricks of the trade, you don't have to spend too much money on your liquor. Um, that's usually most people's big expense, the liquor and the casinos. If you can stay out the bar and the casino, it's practically free once you get on the water.
And on what ship was your first cruise?
Wow, my first cruise was one of those short Bahamas. You leave Florida, Fort Lauderdale, and you go to the Bahamas and you spend the day and come right back. And I don't even know the cruise line that was. My first major cruise was the Fantastic Voyage with Tom Joyner. And that's the granddaddy of the cruises because of the entertainment lineup. Tom has such access to so many people, plus the charitable aspect of the foundation and what it does. So it brings out big sponsors and big name talent. And so taking that first cruise with Tom was an eye opener, and I believe that was on Royal Caribbean.
Hmm. Now, I did mention in the intro that you did some work with Tom Joyner. Talk about that a little bit.
Absolutely. I spent 8 years doing, first of all, a feature called Seriously Ignorant News, where I made light of stupid criminal stories every Tuesday. But then that spun off into me being a fill-in for J. Anthony Brown, Tom's right-hand man, and eventually getting my own Friday show slot for the entire shift with Tom. But it all started because Tom Joyner is a Chicago-based legend, even though he's not originally from Chicago. He's from Tuskegee, Alabama. But his radio career blossomed here when he became the fly jock and flew back and forth between Chicago and Dallas. So he was a legend. I've listened to Tom Joyner since maybe second grade when he was on AM radio here in Chicago. So he started,
Wow.
yeah. So he started doing live Sky shows where he would broadcast his radio show live, but have a concert at 5 a.m. in the morning in a venue. And I always used to mill around and try to get on one of those shows till eventually I was in a play with Thea Vidal and Howard Hewitt and the late Carl Wright. And the play was being featured on Tom's show when we were in Atlanta. So they brought me in as a cast member, and that's how I got the affiliation to get on the Sky Show. And then from the Sky Show, I got on the cruise. From the cruise, I got on his radio show. And now he's like a relative. I talk to Tom, every couple of weeks just to shoot a fat. Yeah, he's still, he went on the last one and he'll be going on the next one. He's, in recovery he had a massive stroke a few years back. And now he's rehabbing himself, but he definitely is still the fly jock. And he has a fly wheelchair that he scoops around in with Gucci and Swarovski crystals. And Tom is always going to keep it fly. Trust
me. Yep. When cruising, you got into cruising first, with what I call booze cruises, those little short cruises to the islands from Florida, and then your first charter with Tom Joyner, and then you joined Festival at Sea was, I guess, 2006.
Yeah, probably even before that. I did 06 forward. I'd be in 2024. Yeah, 06 sound about right. Maybe even earlier. I might have done it. I've done it once before they made me permanent and they brought me back. Maybe so that might have been 02, 03, something like that.
So it sounds like you were performing, several times a year on cruise ships. And then, of course, we had the pandemic, and we know what it did to cruising. Talk about how it impacted you in other ways, which I know were major because nothing was open.
Absolutely, it was. It was a stop and halt for the industry of stand up because our industry depended on people coming to see you live. So what we did do is pivot to Zoom, and thank God for Zoom. Is because sometimes organizations, municipalities, social groups would hire comedians to spice up the Zoom. So, like for instance, if someone was having their annual conference, which they used to do in person, they would do it on Zoom. And when they went to break, they would, have a comedy break to kind of lighten up the thing because it's 8 hours Zoom and nobody wants to sit there all day without some type of form of entertainment. So that helped. Like places like Raleigh, North Carolina, the city of Raleigh had their annual Christmas or holiday party on Zoom, and they booked us. A couple of sororities and fraternities had gatherings, and so that's what we did. And then I also was active on social media, mainly Instagram, And I just got on every day at a regular time, like it was a regular show, but I kind of made it like a radio show. I played music and interacted with the people, and that kind of really increased my following on Instagram because I wasn't really big on that before the pandemic. So you adjust and adapt, but it was still a struggle. I hope we never go back to that. And but human ingenuity will find a way
Sure.
somehow.
So, what was your first cruise after the shutdown?
Festival C. Yeah. I went
Sure.
back out with Festival. The first one that they took back out, I was right there with them. And, we went to Celebrity Cruise Line at that point, and there was a lot of caution and precaution taken, around the ship. And now some of those really ways or methods have been maintained throughout cruising, the sanitizer and the hand washers when you enter the dining room or the buffet, which should have been there anyway, because cruises historically have had, bugs floating around, not insects, but, people get the flu bug or the food bug here and there going from different islands. So it's good that they stepped up that. And then we just did the Capital Jazz was on Holland America. They don't even allow the self-service, how most cruises, you make your own salad, you grab your own, dessert. They actually tend to you and they have it blocked off with the plexiglass. So I think that's a great precaution. But I mean, it's just a great way of life, man.
I
It's a
used
great
to
way of life.
say that buffets was kind of the entry drug that drew me to cruising. I used to be into all inclusives, which was nice, and then I heard about cruising and sounded like almost like an all
Absolutely.
inclusive on a ship. So I really was into buffets. But I'll be honest, since the COVID shutdown, I'm not a big buffet guy. Now I do like the idea that they serve you on Holland America.
Yes, yeah, they definitely serve everyone. Even your beverages, they'll bring, the pitchers to the table so that you're not all around crowding around that machine, getting your beverages. And it's just, it's an extra level of service. I mean, to be honest, nobody wants to make your own food. Only thing is, it also is smart for them economically because it limits your portion size. Because we'll overpile a plate at a buffet because our eyes are bigger than our bellies. So I think that works well for everybody involved because you hate to waste that food, but you want to experience uh, all the cuisine because like I said, it's already all included. So it might be something you might not even think that you'll like, but this is your opportunity to taste it because you've already paid for it. So that's the flip side of that. But just the cruise life in general, like there are comedians who are cruise ship comedians. That's their entire career. They dedicate themselves. And when you're a cruise ship comic, they actually make you commit to maybe 2 or 3 months on the ship without coming back home at times. And that would become more of a chore for me.
So talk about your career with Festival at Sea. Uh, did did they attract you, or did were you attracted to them? How did you all get together?
Well, I think I saw Michael Collier used to do it, and maybe somehow he may I know he definitely put in a word for me for this Capital Cruise. But Festival C, either he recommended me or I saw he was doing it and I reached out to them. I'm not certain who initiated, but I got on once as just a performer. But the interesting thing about that was I was just supposed to maybe do a couple of host gigs. I didn't have my own 1 hour performance, but they had a midnight deck party scheduled, and Sinbad was on the ship that year, and he had just done his 1 hour show. And then later that night, they were going to have a deck party, but it was a storm. So they pivoted and asked me if I would do a performance, and everybody came to the main theater, and I tore it to pieces, and they kept me. After that, they was like, "Wow, we had no idea, that you had this type of material and such." And so I pride myself on being spontaneous and speaking on experiences in the moment, so that I'm on the ship for 7 days, I shouldn't be talking about stuff I thought of 6 months ago on land. When so much is taking place on the ship, there's so much material walking around. The conversations it's conversations you can eavesdrop and get 5 minute jokes. You can experience things at the ports and at the different stops that everybody went through. If it was a line to get to something, or if it was a problem with the tenders, and I'm like a daily news report and commentary, so that keeps it fresh. And I think that's how I've been invited back for so long.
Festival at Sea. I was kind of describing the cruise in the intro. It's not primarily a music cruise. That's an African American cultural cruise. But over the years, pretty much everybody who is anybody has performed live. When I met you, the headliner was Anthony Hamilton. Say something about your favorite music performances over the years on Festival at Sea.
Oh wow! I mean, the first one I did, Ohio players were there, and that's when the original members were all still assembled, and that was an honor to be on the show with them because I had toured with them previously for a couple of dates, and they also were paired with me for a birthday show at House of Blues Chicago, and that was awesome. So I knew the guys, but I mean, everyone from the Whispers, you know, Charlie Wilson. I love music, Soul Child's music, the BBD. Those cats. You know, it's the like you said, it's a who's who. The ladies, Lettucey, I was introduced to her live on that cruise, and she's from the Bay Area, which is where the cruise originates as far as the travel agency goes. And so, there's such an astounding list. I wish I could even think of all the people that have been on there, so I can give you more examples, like Charlie Wilson. It's just been amazing.
Hmm hmm You mentioned Lettucey and Music Soul Child. They were on the Maxwell cruise that I was just on.
Yeah, music was on this cruise as well. And so was Leela James. She's dynamic. If anybody gets a chance to go see Leela James, I was highly impressed. That was my first introduction to her
Yeah,
live performance.
yeah, she was on the Maxwell cruise as well. So similar to music, Festival at Sea features a comedy throughout the cruise, ranging from, at least when I was there last, a continuous series during the first few nights of the cruise called Last Comic Sailing, and and then they have performances from nationally known comic stars. The cruise that I was on, where I saw you, the headliners were Gary Owen and AJ Jamal. Talk about some Festival at Sea comedy highlights over the years.
Oh well, let's
Besides,
start.
besides your performances.
Yeah, certainly. Well, starting with the first one, which was Sinbad, who was one of the nicest human beings on earth and one of the great guys and a good friend to me, who helped. His brother and their business partner helped launch my career and gave me my first television appearance on Comedy Central on a show called Comic Justice. So, and then when Sinbad would come to town, he would offer me an opening slot at that's historic Chicago theater. And one story about that, as I'll continue with Sinbad, then I'll talk about the others. He was in Chicago theater the last time I performed with him, and after I went up, he went out. And when I came backstage, his family members, they're all from Michigan. They all came to Chicago to see him, and they were crying. They were back there crying. And it turns out that his mother was in the hospital, but his father died while he was performing. Yeah, so at the end of the set, he was trying to, or at some point during the set, he was trying to wave his face. I got my whole family back here. Y'all come on out. And nobody could go out there because they were all in tears and he didn't know yet. And so, yeah, so he had to wait. He said, man, I don't know why they fronting on me, but don't worry about it. So he went on with his show. He did his big Q&A and he killed it. Then he came off stage and he was informed about his father's passing. Now, mind you, I'm opening the show. Sinbad himself booked me. There's nobody else I can talk to about this, but I haven't been paid yet. So, of course, I can't ask anybody, yeah, I know his dad died, but where's my money? So I just left. And here's the person that he is. He called me himself about 30 minutes later in the midst of the grief that they were experiencing. He had the presence of mind to say, hey, did anybody pay Damon? Clearly, they said no. So he called me and told me, man, I said, man, don't even worry about that. He said, no, you come back here. You worked, you come and get your money. And he had me come back to his hotel and pick up my money on when he just found out his father died. So Sinbad will always be the greatest, not just because of that moment, but because he's really a great comic and he's clean and he's very witty and spontaneous. But on that cruise, I've worked with Lavelle Crawford, Cedric the Entertainer, who had a great set on there. We laughed about it. D.L. Hughley, which are two of my guys that are Kings of Comedy, and I was able to tour with those guys when that tour was out. And then I just came off tour with them, just now, so they're top of mind. I'm trying to think who else might have been on that ship that are super notable in the comedy world. But like you mentioned, Gary Owen. I'm trying to think who else. Ladies, I guess had to be some women on there as well, headlining. But it's been a fantastic, not no pun intended, experience doing Festival at Sea. That is my home. That's my home base cruise. Any other cruise at this point is secondary, no disrespect. But they have embraced me since day one, and I'll always be a Festival at Sea as long as they'll have me.
Mm-hmm. Now, I was telling the listeners about Friends of Festival at Sea, which, as you know, is kind of an affiliated brand, very high-end cruises on luxury vessels. And we're booked on the French River cruise on Christina. I was so excited when recently we got an email, that they're bringing their dance instructor and a DJ and a jazz player and you as the host, and I was very excited about that. So talk about, have you been on any, say, Friends of Festival at Sea Adventures?
Right, the Friends. Yeah, I went on the trip to South Africa which was in 2008 or 9,
Mm-hmm.
and in fact it had to be 09 because out on the sea we were able to listen to the inauguration of Barack Obama. So we had an
Oh,
inaugural
wow.
ball aboard, and it was on a small German line. When they do Friends, it's a smaller scale than the huge cruise ships. And it was a luxury vintage, all hardwood cabins and beautiful. And I took my mother because at the time I was single. So I took my mother, and they went for 17 days along the coast of Africa in the Indian Ocean. But I jumped off after 10 days because A, I had to go out and get some more gigs. B, I was cruising and sharing a cabin with my mother. So, you can only do so much of that. Yeah.
Enough said. How would you contrast Festival at Sea, which is a great time? I mean, it's a great cruise. Contrast Festival at Sea with Friends of Festival at Sea. I know there's a big difference in the level of luxury, but what are some other differences?
The level of maturity. It's an older demographic that has the purse strings to jump out there on a French Riviera river cruise or an Indian Ocean 17 days. First of all, who has 17 days off? Mostly retired people. Secondly, yeah, who else has that type of money? Because it's upscale, but it's still the same vibe. It's still the same village. The camaraderie. You can tell some of the people that were probably initially just Festival at Sea goers felt like they needed just a little extra, level of comfort and luxury and smaller, intimate gatherings as well. So, but they're both. I highly recommend anything that Blue World Travel puts out, even if it's a land-based organization. I mean, a situation, or if you're trying to organize your own excursions or trips, they also can facilitate that for not only personal people but also organizations and groups. So I'm trying to put together a comedy cruise at some point, or maybe not even a cruise. I think I'd rather do a land-based resort comedy excursion weekend. That's my ultimate goal with that, because I've come into contact with so many savvy travelers between the Tom Joyner and the festival and the capital that I'm pretty sure I could draw 200 or 300 people over to a really nice spot and get that done.
Well, you have my contact information. So when you get that done, I'm there.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. One other thing about the upcoming Friends trip. Have you ever done a river cruise?
I have not. The closest thing to it would have been the voyage we took for South Africa because it was a smaller vessel. But to do a river cruise with the flat water, that's going to be awesome. I'm a boater myself, and my boat is on the river here at the Calumet River in Chicago area, which is only there for for a couple of months. So I really enjoy boat life and aquatics, swimming, snorkeling, water skiing. All those things are, that's my jam. So I'm looking forward to the laid back aspect of a river cruise, the smaller, intimate group of people, and the scenery that we'll partake in with the multiple ports over the multiple days. And it's a blessing for me that I'm able to bring my wife. So, we've been to France once before when we went on the other Mediterranean cruise, but to have this type of experience and then have 3 days in Paris at the end of it, they really put together a first class excursion. Yeah, and that's vital if you're going to go to France. We went, like you said, we went on the Mediterranean. So we caught the train in Monaco, and we went around, as far as we could with the proximity of the stops that we took. But Paris, that one iconic photo of the Eiffel Tower, you want to experience that in your life. I've been once, so I know the feeling. And it's so funny, depending on how you approach the tower, it comes out of nowhere. So if you're on the subway and you catch the subway, you come out the subway station and you go around the corner and bam, it's right there, man. And it's a spectacular sight.
Awesome sight. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So promote yourself. Any tours or events you would like to tell our listeners about?
Absolutely. Starting with, I'm on a Netflix special that comedian Samore produced. It's called All the Queen's Men. It's a series called that's on BET Plus. That's not us. It's a special, stand-up special on Netflix. Look that up. You can either search Samore or you can search my name or search All the Queen's Men. I also have a stand-up comedy.
Oh, let me interrupt for a second. The Netflix special, is it out already?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Okay.
It's been out for several months. Actually, we shot that pre-COVID, and BET licensed it, but they kind of shelved it. And thankfully, they didn't show it because that made it eligible for Netflix. And so, yes, she presents 4 of her comics. Samore usually does a tour, and she takes other comics on the road. And she considered us 4 of her favorite guys to work with. And so she called us All the Queen's Men, which was awesome of her to do because she also shot her own special while we were there. So they did a 2-for-1 while they had the production set up. But she blessed us with that opportunity. I also shot my own series, stand-up series, where it's 8 episodes with 3 comedians per episode, where we do a sit-down interview and then the comedians do their set. And it's like they get mini comedy specials of their own on each episode. And that's called Laugh Tonight with Damon Williams. It was initially launched on Urban Flix TV, which is a Black-owned streaming network that is not well known. But if you all get an opportunity to support a Black streaming network, Urban Flix is great. However, my series has now been moved to free TV on Tubi. So you can now, if you got a Fire Stick or Roku TV, you can go right to Tubi, search my name or Laugh Tonight, and it'll pop right up. 8 episodes, great show, man. We filmed it actually right the week before the world shut down in COVID. We wrapped in California the first week of March, and like I said, but it's on Urban Flix, which is little known, so no one has really seen it. I can't say no one, but it didn't do major numbers on that. Now that it's free to the public, I expect it to really give me a little bump and a boost, not only for myself, but all the comics that I featured on the platform.
Yeah, I have Netflix and I have Tubi, so I know what I'm going to be doing tonight, or at least up until the Laker game.
How about
that? So are you besides performing on cruise ships, so you already said you're a boater, are you a traveler in general? Do you like to travel?
Yeah, prior to doing stand-up, I took trips, man. When I was probably 19, 20, that's when I started getting the travel bug. So I would take time off whenever I had my vacation. When I worked at City Hall for 5 years in Chicago, I went to Jamaica, I went to Mexico, I went to Maui. These are my early 20s, all land-based. Of course, I didn't fancy cruises back then. So I've always been that guy. And then for like music concerts, festivals and such, back then they had the Budweiser Superfest or the Cool Jazz Fest. I would travel for those, maybe Cincinnati or Atlanta. So I've always been moving around. And then, of course, I'm perpetually traveling on tour now. So my tour dates are all listed on DamonWilliamsComedy.com. If you go on DamonWilliamsComedy.com to keep up with me, that'll link you to my social media posts, which is updated daily. And then usually there's a link for my upcoming performances on the site or on the page. So definitely always on my way somewhere. If I'm not there, I'm home. I have two enterprises I'm really doing in Chicago right now, which is one, the Ameristar Casino in East Chicago, Indiana, on a monthly basis. And then I curate the weekends at a comedy club, Riddle's Comedy Club here in Chicago, every Friday and Saturday. I bring in talent, top name talent and lesser known talent every weekend. And when I'm home, I'm there hosting. Plenty of me time during the day on most weekdays, but I'm I wear a lot of hats for my own career. I have a booking manager, my girl Jada, who you contacted directly. She does my bookings, but I do hands-on social media administration. I have a feature where I call in on WZAK in Cleveland radio with my man Sam Silk every Tuesday and Thursday. And I'm on DL Hughley's show every Wednesday for 1-2 minute feature that I call in as well. So I write that, I produce that. I'm producing the reels for all of the advertising you see on my social media. I have a wife and two dogs around here. And when it's summertime, I ride my bike along the lakefront on a regular basis in Chicago. So between the boat, the bikes, my babe and the puppies and the travel, that's my life in a nutshell.
That's your life. Well, I certainly look forward to meeting your wife. Look forward to meeting you again or seeing you again on in France, and look forward to meeting your wife, because river cruising is a lot more intimate than ocean cruising. It's only what's going to be like 150 of us, right?
Right.
Yep.
And that's awesome, man. That's like hanging out with your best friends,
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure some of them will be overlapped from previous years of Festival C. So I'm sure we'll have a lot of familiar faces.
Yep.
And without the hoopla and the long lines of any sort. And just to be chilling, man, in Europe is really, really that's a fantastic opportunity, not only for me as a performer, but for the passengers who have taken it upon themselves to book the cruise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it'll be good to see Patricia Yarbrough again. Patricia has been on the podcast, the founder of Festival at Sea, an amazing story. I did a chapter on her in my first cruising book, The Joy of Cruising, and someone needs to do a whole book about Patricia. So.
Absolutely. Her and her family are amazing. Her husband, Herb, her son, Kevin. And they have another son, but I always forget his name because he was such a baby when we first started doing festival that I haven't bonded with him, but I'm going to get that. So next time I do one of these, I can give him a shout out as well, because they work as a unit, and her team is so accommodating and so professional and so accomplished at travel that, it's seamless. Once you get on the boat, you're going to have a great time. That's guaranteed to happen. Your activities will be multiple. You won't have a dull moment unless you choose to relax and chill. And so they really have a great thing going. And for them to start with, maybe 50 or 150 passengers to now, doing complete charters and complete resort takeovers, it is quite an amazing story. And it's African American history.
Yes, yeah. Very interesting how they started. Her first performer was Phyllis Hyman, and
Wow.
in my in the chapter I wrote on her, it's got a great Phyllis Hyman story. Actually, she has a Sinbad story as well. So
Good.
Yep. Before we let you go get back to your very, very busy schedule, just some real quick, what I call light questions, maybe fun questions, and then maybe an oddball question. I say oddball in that it doesn't specifically have to do with cruising. So the first light question: what's your favorite cruise drink and cruise food?
Favorite cruise drink would be a Mai Tai. I would probably do a Mai Tai. That's my vacation go-to drink. And secondly, I love champagne. We all love lobster tail night on the boat. And some of the cruise lines have figured out that us as a people, we Negroes will eat up all the lobster. So they'll make it a premium. They do it one time a week on the 7th day when it's free, usually. But I noticed on Holland, it's always an upcharge. So those are my two answers for that. What's the answer? What's the answer to those questions for you?
My drink is Miami Vice. You familiar with that? Pina colada and strawberry daiquiri. Believe it or not, my favorite food on a cruise ship, it's the
Okay.
only time I eat it,
And
is when
drink.
I'm on a cruise ship, is escargot.
That comes with the culture and experience. My father was a connoisseur of fine dining, and he would always order the escargot, and it would be sizzling with the butter, and it would be beautiful.
If you told me when I was a kid that I'd be eating snails, I said, "Oh, no, no way in the world."
What about your drink?
But I love it. My drink is Miami Vice. You familiar with that?
Yeah, my wife drinks those.
Yep, yep. Pina colada and strawberry daiquiri. I did try some. Your dad would be proud because I did try some fine dining that I regretted. It was called, I probably said it wrong, foie gras. You familiar with that? And so first of all, and it was up. I was already in a specialty restaurant, so I had paid. I guess I had filet mignon, and then I had foie gras on top of it. So that was another upcharge. And number one, it wasn't all that. But number two, I'm one of these guys. I always have my cell phone out, even at the table, which my wife gets on me about.
Right.
And I looked up foie gras on Wikipedia, and I learned that there's a lot of cultural. There's a big fight. There's a lot of regions of the world that have made that illegal. I guess because in order to get it, you have to artificially fatten up ducks, because I guess it's like a duck. It's duck liver or something like that.
Right.
So I was eating it and feeling real guilty. So the second question, what's your most memorable or funniest or even most embarrassing cruise or port experience?
Memorable, funny. I tell you, we were coming back to the ship, and there are multiple ships in port lined up, and our ship is always a spectacle when we pull up because we're so colorful and we're normally loud. Our music is bumping when the ship pulls into port, so they see us when we come in, and they look over. They're like, "What cruise is that? What is this?" So when I got off the ship, and this is a twofold answer. We got off the ship, and the cab driver, we were in Jamaica, and all the cab drivers, like, he looked back and he saw all African Americans, and he looked at me, and he just had to ask. He said, "The entire ship is colored?" I'm like, "Yeah, man, it's all Black people on this ship. I've worked this thing so many years, I've never seen such a thing. You're all so loud and colorful." Like, yes, the entire ship is Black. And then secondly, on the way back from an excursion, once again, we were on our ship, and there was a mainstream ship, I'll put it that way. And it was these drunken white girls, and they were so stumbling drunk, and they were running late that they ran and they stumbled down the grassy knoll that's between the ships and fell in the water alongside. Yeah, man. They fell in the water alongside the ship. Luckily, they were fished out and everybody was survived, but that's how drunk they were. So they got off the ship and got on the booze cruise and then got drunk, which, I can see getting on, water excursions after getting off the ship. But to be honest, to get off a boat, to get on a boat seems kind of redundant.
When I'm walking up to get back on the ship, I have my card out to show the guard or whatever. I always worry about dropping my card in the water. And
imagine dropping yourself in. Right. And you got all your stuff on you and your phone and everything, and they feel dead.
And I'm not gonna lie, I'm from Brooklyn. I can't swim, so.
Oh, well, you need to do something about that. It's never too late to learn. And swimming is, especially if you're on cruises as much as you are, you need to go ahead and take a class in the winter or the summer.
But I actually tried to do that. My wife and I, we were going to take a class together, and and I guess it was sort of a carryover from the pandemic, because this was like maybe a year ago. And every number we called, they weren't taking anybody. They didn't have enough help. But you're right. It's something, it's never too late. The oddball question, I know some of your social media following is listening because I advertise heavily on your feed, or I will advertise heavily on your feed. So let me say welcome to the many Damon Williams fans who are listening. We certainly hope you have enjoyed listening to the Joy of Cruising podcast, and we'll come back to listen to additional episodes. Damon, say one thing that my listeners and your followers don't know about Damon.
Unless they are really, really closely following, or they've watched the series that I mentioned, Laugh Tonight with Damon Williams. Most people that know me don't know that I literally have a bullet in my leg right now as we speak.
Oh, wow. Now, are you going to give us the backstory, or you'd rather? Maybe you shouldn't.
Well, yeah, it's an interesting story because it's in my material now. So if you watch the show, you'll see it. I think it's episode 4. I talk about it. But it happened when I was in my late teens. I was a little hooligan, doing a little weed and stuff like that, and I got shot, man. And I know who did it, you know what I'm saying? I know where he is to this day, but I never told, and I never will, because, I don't want to tell on myself. Yeah, I shot myself. It was an accident, but
Get out of here!
Yeah.
I thought, when you said you don't want to tell on yourself, I thought maybe it was someplace you weren't supposed to be, but you literally don't want to tell on yourself.
I didn't want to tell myself the culprit. If you watch Laugh Tonight, you watch that episode 4. I lead off the show with that story.
All righty. Well, Damon, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to come on the Joy of Cruising podcast. All the best to you in your illustrious career, and we will see you in France.
Absolutely. Look forward to it. Bon voyage and oui.
The Joy of Cruising and Cruising Interrupted, each $16.99 plus shipping, and new release, The Joy of Cruising Again, for $18.99, can be ordered at the link on thejoyofcruisingpodcast.com. For each of the 3 books, use the discount code Joy of Cruising Podcast and get $4 off. The Joy of Cruising books are also available at Amazon. Order the ebook at Amazon or your favorite online retailer. Stay in touch by joining the Joy of Cruising Podcast Facebook group or following the Joy of Cruising Podcast on Instagram. We're constantly adding new shows. Please leave a review and tell a friend about us. We hope you enjoyed this brief escape to the ocean. See you next week.